Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. I mean, coming off of a pretty heavy combat sports weekend in Vegas, especially, which you were lucky enough to be there for. Your very first karate combat event. So I'm excited to hear you talk. Give me your live take on that and how it went with all the theatrics in the pit and everything. And then obviously you were there in the house for UFC 296, which was the last pay per view of the year. Um, and in my opinion, was probably one of the if you were gonna not list top UFC events, that's definitely one of them. Um, but yeah, we're coming down the line of 2023.
Yep, winding down. Got in a couple events before the year ended, as you mentioned. So yeah, Friday night karate combat. I wasn't able to do the weigh-ins and the press conference for the UFC. It was too tight of a window. I wasn't familiar with necessarily where I was going for karate combat, so I didn't want to be scrambling last minute. Figured it'd be better to get there an hour early than an hour late after trying to figure out, all the logistics after the UFC stuff. Like I said, which was kind of backed up right to it. The start of karate combat. Um, so got there. Visually, it looks awesome. I mean, the visual of the pit and the whole setup of being like in like a convention center kind of hallway kind of gave
Hmm.
like that underground Fight Club vibe of going to like maybe like an underground New York, like subway kind. You know what I mean? Kind of like industrial building kind of thing in the middle of nowhere. Um, so visually, it was awesome. Um, the fights were great. Um, you warned me about shoes. You warned me about it, but nothing's going to change the fact that I'm 45 and standing for 6.5 hours is going to eventually take a toll. And it did.
Yeah.
But here's what happened. So there was 13 fights on the card. There was about 6 or 7 of them that I was really into. So I made
Hmm.
sure that I was standing and had a good view for those 6 or 7 fights. The other ones I kind of just cruised around, peeped the scene out. I was able to finally make contact with the great Nolan King, which was
Hmm.
cool. So we got a couple minutes to chat before Sean O'Malley showed up, and he had to go kind of do his thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's there was a lot of people there, a ton of celebrities, the most
Hmm.
fighter celebrities I've seen at an event in I mean, a long, long. I mean, going back to the days when it like wasn't a big deal just to have Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz kind of strolling around with Dan Henderson and Marco
Hmm.
Huas. I mean, it was a different era where the money wasn't there. This time you had big names. I mean, from Mike Perry, Sean O'Malley, Volkanovski, got fist bump Nate Diaz on his way into the arena. Um, Got to meet Dashvili, Vicente Luque, ran into George St. Pierre on the way out of the event. Um, Boss Rutan was obviously there. Claudia Gadelia showed up. Um, Jalen Turner was there. The Kawani brothers were there. I mean, there
Hmm.
was a lot. It was packed. It was literally packed. I mean, you gave me the warning, and it was exactly what you thought. People were crowded around the base. I didn't have access to the base of the thing, but I was about, at points I could get 3-4 feet away from the wall. Um,
Hmm.
but again, visually, and it was cool. If I win again, maybe I wouldn't show up an hour early and start standing. I might have to play it a little more strategic, but I highly
Well,
recommend the event to anybody. I actually
yeah.
spoke with a promoter. It's kind of funny, a promoter who I'm not in either promotion, but a promoter tapped me on the shoulder out of the blue during the event and asked me how I knew about the event. And jokingly, I told him it was from following him on Facebook, which I do.
Hmm.
And somebody I've actually
Hmm.
had some conversations with on private messages on Facebook with. But he doesn't know me, in person. So I got to chatting with him, and he was kind of wondering what it is that allowed kind of this event to come out of nowhere and have a capacity house, and um, there was a few things. That it was new and fresh. You had something that nobody had ever seen before, at least most people hadn't seen before. You've seen it on TV if you were a pretty hardcore fan of this event. And obviously they had a couple events you could have crept maybe into, or if you did media like yourself. But the average fan there, as far as they knew, this was like Karate Combat event number one. You know,
Mm,
what I mean? Like they didn't know that there was 42 other events necessarily, and that um,
yeah.
they've been all around the world promoting events. Um, so it's fresh, new. Obviously, all the big names. I explained to him there's a little bit of social media push from some of the characters on social media, along with just a ton of celebrities in the crowd. I said, you put that many celebrities in the crowd, you're going to draw. It's going to magnetize the MMA fan to show up to it,
Yeah.
and a headlining event of Pettis and Henderson. I mean, as with available guys to put a fight together, there's not really a better matchup that you're probably going to think of in the top, over an hour period, where you could take two guys who are free agents at this time, who have a history of fighting, who both are down to fight again, and do it for a promotion that's not, well, there's not going to be 40,000 people, not 15,000 people in the crowd. You know what I mean? So they got Pettis Henderson, big names. Um, and it just seemed like it was a success. I mean, it seemed like a massive success. I don't know how many tickets they gave away. I don't know how much of a gate they actually made, but as far as making a footprint in the fight world, I think it was a huge success for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was on YouTube. Karate Combat has never really charged for to watch it. You could always all their events are on their website. All their events are on their YouTube channel. Before this, for a little while, they did some smart things to stay afloat. When they first started, they were doing these live events. Um, they recorded it. It's funny you're talking about their very first event. The first event is actually recorded. Um, it's pre-recorded, and it's why I think it's why they went back to doing it so often during between karate. I think they called the first event Genesis Karate Combat 1 and 43. But it's actually really cool if you go back and watch their very first event. So it's pre-recorded, but it's shot on film like a movie. So it looks really cool. Then they tried doing a lot of things with they were doing a lot of innovative things with combat sports. If you look at my early coverage of them, excuse me, on SureDog.com, you'll see that there were and the boss has talked about this on Rogan too. But the gloves they use are kind of like the old Shuto gloves, kind of like these that I have here, old school Shuto gloves. So the gloves that they use for the most of the events are like that. But there was a sensor inside of it that was kind of like a band-aid that they put inside that they could measure the impact of the punches. There's a lot of technology involved in the early events. They even were doing something with mouthpieces where the mouthpiece was brought in, and I talked to the guy when they were in New York. I actually was standing right next to the guy that was one of the people that worked for the technology, and the name of it escapes because it's again, this is 2019 when they were in New York. But what they could do, there's a way to track if you received a concussion and see if you're getting CTE by the saliva that's in the mouthpiece that the fighter was wearing. So they were doing a lot of innovative things that I feel like combat would have helped combat sports overall. And then as they advanced, obviously, like you said, and it's funny because even when I talk with my training partners who watch a lot of fights and not just the UFC, they said something pretty much like you said. They were like, I didn't know about karate combat until this Pettis Henderson card. So the fact that they're getting names not just in the pit but in the audience is helping with their brand. It took them a long time to get to Vegas, but there's a lot of when you're starting a promotion, especially something that's, I mean, which is essentially kickboxing with a little bit of ground and pound. Um, there's a lot of like red tape, and for folks that don't know, you and I know this because we've been following the sport for a long time. But if you haven't figured it out by now, promoting events in combat sports, these commissions, it's I wrote something about this in my newsletter too. It's like a good old boys network. So if you're not part of that network, you have to find it in, and it makes it very hard for you to hold events in certain areas. And then COVID happened, so it made it harder for them. So they a lot of their recorded events that if you watch them now, they have their like little studio in Florida for a long time. Um, and then there's like management changes and stuff that happen. Creative decisions have happened as far as like the fighters. You're seeing more MMA fighters as long as they have a karate base now. They can get in there, and it's helping grow the brand. That's why they had the main event they had. Um, but like it's what competitive karate. If you've ever done karate and you've ever trained with someone karate, and I have, I know I said this last week. I did Ishinru for 11 years. Um, and I've talked with the co-founder and former president Adam Kovacs, who's also black belt in karate and competitor. And this is what anyone that's got their heart in karate, like I do, as their initial like real true combat sport, because they've trained in it and they fell in love with it. This is what you expect to see. This is what those B movies were made out of back in the day. There's very, I mean, and you can agree that there's like a weird blood sport 90s vibe, right? To the whole
For
thing.
sure, for sure. It definitely
Yeah.
had like a retro kind of feel to it, and um, I don't know if it was kind of like the space uh, theme that this one had. It kind of like it kind of felt like a little
Hmm.
I don't know, Flash Gordon-y kind of, like
Hmm.
just kind of 80s, uh, but like you said, with the karate and, you have all the 80s karate movies. Um,
Hmm.
it was cool. And like, for me, like the highlight was basically like Raymond Daniels, because I feel like he's
Yeah.
about as good as like, now I don't know if he's pure, I don't know exactly his background. It might not be technically actual, I don't know if it's, I mean, I'm sure he has some kind of form of karate in there, but just his form and his style and his technique, and his precision and all that stuff, and his ability to keep distance and be able to do
Hmm.
these crazy moves without getting countered. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, everybody can do a spinning, not everybody can do a spinning back kick, but people that train can do that kind of stuff. But can you do it and not get friggin' countered with a, with a hook that sends you spinning another, two twists around, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So the fact that he's actually able to do it in live combat situations where he's got another killer across the mat or across the pit
Yeah.
from him that's trying to knock his head off is I find that just incredibly impressive. Plus, like, you don't see a lot of the kicks and stuff he does. You just don't see in MMA because of a lot of the takedowns and stuff. You can't do
Yeah.
that to
Exactly.
you do that
Yeah.
to a D1 wrestler, they're going to dump you on your head a lot of the time. So,
Yeah.
um, but so just seeing that flash and, like you said, that old school kind of feel to it, it's 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 got it's a nice starting point, even though it's at
Hmm.
43. This is a nice starting point for them to start to become visual to the public more now, and
Yeah.
I think they just need to build off of the names. I mean, it's nice seeing Sam Alvey in there. Um,
Yeah. He
it's
won
nice
the
to see him be
heavyweight title. Yeah.
successful. I'm
Yeah.
happy for the guy being successful, because there's all, you can like just like, like you can think whether he should be in the UFC or not. That's a fair question based off of how it kind of ended. But I don't think anybody has anything bad to say about Sam Alvey. You know what I mean? He seems like he's a great dude who loves to fight and I mean, his name says it. He seems to always have a smile on his face. So
Hmm.
I'm glad. It's nice to see some good things happen to good people.
Yeah.
And
So, like, we don't know what it's 43 events. It looks at the if you watch the event or if you go to karate combat, they do a karate kind of like the I know UFC uses that fan token. I forget the name of the fan token, but Karate Combat has their own version of that, and they have an app where you can do votes and earn tokens and use them to vote on things. And one of the things they said during the broadcast is like they're thinking about changing the grounded rule. I don't know if it's an extension on time or whatever. Personally, I think it's fine the way it is. Because if you start adding submissions and stuff like that or whatever, then it's just MMA. Like it's just MMA without wrestling. Because it has to be trips and throws for the ground stuff to happen. You can't double like anybody. Um, but it's
I'd make it 10 seconds. Personally, being there, seeing it in live, the 5
mm-hmm,
seconds is really quick, and I almost feel like like either don't have any at all or make it like 10 seconds, because I didn't feel like enough could happen in that 5 seconds for it to be really worth
mm,
the whole effort. So, 10 seconds to me, like, a guy can't just cover up his head and kind of say, "Hey, just hit me 3 times. I'm gonna survive 5 seconds." Guy
yeah.
gets unloaded on for 10 seconds, you're gonna get a lot more stoppages and stuff. So, I think that might be something that would help, not
Yeah, and I hate to say it because it's part of their brand, but when I especially having felt it and leaned on it and stuff like that. When I covered the event here in New York, I feel the pit is just weird to me. I feel like the pit is
It
I know
is
it's
weird. It
cool.
is weird, but it's cool, and I think people probably said the same thing about a caged octagon. I think
Hmm.
if you have a brand and it's something that's kind of a part of your
Hmm.
logo, I think you roll with it. And it is odd, but it also adds some positions and stuff that you've never seen before. I've never
Like
seen a guy tilted up against a wall get kneed in the face. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
So
no. So that's why I'm like, I know that's not one that's gonna go over well. But that's my personal take, especially because I put my hand to it and I felt it. It's the padding is not like it's not like that thick, like the Bellator and UFC canvas. There's some padding, for grappling as far as impact on the ground, but it's very canvasy and it can tear a guy's skin up. This is kind of like those workout puzzle padding mats that you can find in like Walmart or
uh,
whatever. So that's the closest thing I can think of. I mean, I don't know if that's what they always use, but that's what I felt when I was close enough to the Karate Combat pit that I was just like, oof, I would hate to be dropped on this. But
I was surprised that the fighters run up the ramp and stand on that wall between rounds.
yeah,
That I was
that's weird
surprised
to
by
me.
that
Yeah.
because I kept waiting for a dazed fighter to try to run up there and just go head over heels over the side of the thing. And there was a
And
couple
that's my
times people
concern.
almost
Yeah.
made misstep. So that was odd
Yeah.
to me. That was new. I thought they would open because when I got there early, the doors were opened. Like they had
Mm.
doors that opened on it. So what I in my mind I pictured that they would open up the doors, they'd set a mat thing on the ground, the cornerman would come and talk to the guy.
No, they
But the
just run
first
up
time I
and
saw the
down.
dude
Yeah.
run up that thing, and I'd probably seen it before on television, but it was the first time I went, "Whoa!" Like these dudes
Yeah,
just
no,
kicked
that
it.
it's always been like that. Yeah.
That
And
dude's
and,
leaking out of
and
his face, just got kicked in the head, and now he's running up a ramp with a
yeah, I
next
feel
to a
like
fall on the
there's
other side.
Uh, to my knowledge, I mean, I've seen a lot of events, but so I don't know if it's happening. But to my knowledge, no one's like tweaked their knee or anything, being half knocked out, running up and down that thing between rounds. So but that's a concern for me, and the fact that you notice it too. It's something they need to think about. And if they again with the doors, just they maybe just open those doors and let the guys, unless it's just it's probably like structurally not sound to have them on both sides and having fighters enter on both sides because they probably don't want them both leaving out and coming in the same way. Takes too much time between rounds. But one thing that Anthony Pettis remarked on after the event was he said himself, like, because he liked it and he said he'd definitely do it again, but he said they have to do something about the pit, not the design, but whatever, like he said whatever it was made out of, whatever type of floor matting that they used, he found it difficult to get a foothold on it, which is strange coming from him, especially if you watched any of the stuff leading up to fight night. He was in there warming up and moving around, but obviously as the night goes, with all the sweat and everything that goes during a live event, I don't know if you can speak on it more than I can. If they, but I don't remember them doing a lot of mat cleaning when I covered it in New York. So I don't know if they did that. Yes. So
I never noticed it happening. It might have happened
yeah.
between fights, but I never noticed it or paid attention.
That's there's something to be said there. But I mean, he definitely liked it. I hope it was something that they won financially on, as far as ticket sales, because the stream, again, it was free on YouTube and everything. And if you were watching it, I mean, you saw Eric McGracken put the screenshot up after the fact. BKFC filed a copyright injunction against him right just before their guy fought on the Karate Combat card. I don't know if that was just sour grapes because of what happened, but then the stream came back. I guess they realized this is stupid of us to attack the promotion
Did you
for
see
our
the
guy being
tweet? Did
stupid.
you see the tweet they sent out?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, BKFC caught it like immediately. They sent out a tweet like
Mhm.
while it was happening, and
Oh,
they
okay.
said it was an accidental thing
Mhm.
because they were playing their clips, and I guess it automatically like triggered something
That makes
because,
sense. Yeah.
and so they pulled it, they dropped it immediately, and they said that not only do they love Karate Combat, but they're apparently in talks about some kind of collaboration in 2024.
Hmm.
So
That
so
that 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 would be. I mean, talking about like not for nothing. I mean, and again, again, this is something that Scott Coker never gets credit for. That would be nice to see more in combat sports rather than hating on each other. Maybe oh look maybe we're both onto something here. Imagine the Karate Combat and you take away the gloves. You know what I mean? like
Yeah,
bare knuckle karate.
but
It'll
even
be,
just
I mean, like,
even just the crossover of rosters opens the door
hmm
for huge for Karate Combat and for
and
BKFC,
BKFC, yeah.
because there's a lot of international flavor in Karate Combat.
hmm
So that obviously helps BKFC with their expansion to some of these other countries,
Yeah,
and
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 their
and not to
welterweight
mention
guy
the
didn't
talent.
get. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because like they're that guy that broke violated his BKFC contract. I mean, regardless of his business acumen or whatever, the sense. I mean, he's somebody you want to watch because he won that night, right?
No, he got folded.
Uh,
That's what even
oh, he
makes
got
it more
folded.
interesting. He
Yeah,
got
so there you
finished
go.
quick.
Yeah.
So that's my thing is like some random hillbilly looking dude with a mullet just finished off the champion
hmm
of BKFC,
Yeah.
and that's why that was initially why I was thinking, oh, they're sour grapes, but then they sent that tweet out real quick which
Okay,
clarified
that's
that,
good
hey,
to know. Yeah.
this was kind of a rogue thing that happened. We didn't mean it to happen. We love this. Oh, we love everything they're doing, and we want to work. We're planning on talking to work with them in the future, and that kind of thing. So um, it got fixed fairly quick, but yeah, I mean, I just think the exchange of roster. I mean, there's some guys, and being able to bring kicks for some of the BKFC guys who have kind of, okay, well, I'm submitted to just throwing bare knuckle. Now I can go get a paycheck, go fight over there, go throw some kicks, and and make a payday, and be a name for them. So I think all that stuff is good. I think anything where you can mix and match fighters to help make main events. Um, who wouldn't want to watch Luis Palomino in Karate Combat, right? Even
hmm
even even Mike Perry, like those.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Y-
fun. Yeah.
you know what I mean? There's a bunch of guys that could.
And the guys that you don't know about, like Josh K from Karate Comedy, Josh K. Hagen, Edgar Scrivers. I'm trying to think off. This is off the top of my head. I can't remember. Who's the guy that I interviewed way back in? Because these guys train out here in New York. El Haji Nadur, that's his name.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, he was a big name. The Dominican fighter. Can't remember Dionisio Gustavo. Dionisio, the Dominican dude, the karate guy out of Dominican Republic. If you don't know that there's talent and karate talent in the Dominican Republic, you just watch this guy, and then you'll find like if you watch Dominican fighters that are coming from Dominican Republic, you'll see they have a deep love for like taekwondo and striking. Even when I was the last time I was down there, I had a Sakuraba t-shirt on, and when the guy that worked at the resort was like, "Yeah, I do," and it was funny how common it was down there. You don't think about that when you're going to the Caribbean, but just to show how far the art reaches. There's a lot of talent out there. Jonas Correa, I'm trying to think who else is fighters that like people would love to see. Guys that if they went to BKFC because of their karate training, like there's no they're breaking bricks and boards and stuff on the regular. Their hands aren't breaking at BKFC. You know what I mean? So like
No,
these guys are literally if they wanted to try BKFC, the thing is, especially like El Haji, because I interviewed him for Sure Dog, he's somebody that loves karate so much. Like, I mean, I know he's had some issues, negotiating with Karate Combat, and because of again, a new promotion coming up, just 43 events, that you're gonna have some rough financial times. But I hope going to Vegas and this event puts them over enough that whatever the future holds for them, they got a new president. I forget what his name is. Um, we'll see what happens, but I still think whatever Kovacs and them started, man. I've always loved Karate Combat. That's why I've written about them so much at Sure Dog and My MMA News. Um, and I just like that vibe, man. I love I that's why I told you about the shoes. I would love to go to another Karate Combat event as a fan and just grab a drink and cheer like I'm some extra in best of the best, best of the best part two because
like
those
a
are like
video
underground.
game, the old '80s
Yeah,
video game where the
yeah.
crowds,
And
right?
they did that for like their first 10, 15 events. If you look, they chose locations. Like they went to Greece and she used like an old arena or whatever. I forget. That was why they did it on the top of the event that I covered here in New York. They were at the top of the Freedom Tower. I mean, it was just they just all these unique events, and they had to stop it because it caught. They're like they even said it publicly. They're like we want to keep on that. We know you guys love it. It was like watching a live action video game.
Mhm.
That's what, and I love that. I love the whole vibe of it. But we'll see, man. But I'm glad you went, and now just bring a folding chair with you or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just it'll just take more planning and no
Mhm,
realizing that there's no real that I don't need to get there early. I'm not telling other people
mhm.
not to get there early and get the best view possible, but I can get there and I can walk around and you can pretty much catch the action from several angles. So you're gonna
Well, mingling, and it's a great it's a great event to mingle at with other fight fans because of that environment of surrounding the pit. Like that's how I met the guy that I interviewed about the with the mouthpiece thing. And I'm sorry I don't remember his name. Again, this was 2019, and I'm not a young man anymore, so I didn't take my lion's mane today, so my memory's not my neurons aren't firing off the way they should. But like I was there just to cover the event, and I'll take my pictures, and we were talking, and I just mentioned to him that I was there for Sure Dog, and he told me, "Well, I'm here. I'm working with them with the innovative this and that," and it turned into an article. You know what I mean? And just like you said, all those people that are there to watch it, it's really like one of those underground rich people fight clubs, and I think that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add an extra couple sets of bleachers just so you
Mhm,
have that option. Maybe push them back 30 feet if you want, so that the people that want to stand up front, so it looks
mhm,
visually different on television, that's fine. But I that's what I would do. Um, I'd piggyback off the UFC 3 times a year if I were them.
mhm,
I'd do a December show, I'd do a July show for Fight Week. Like, I'd have an international if the UFC's not gonna run second shows in International Fight Week, if I'm Karate Combat, I'm booking a show every July, and I'd do one in March too. Every time the UFC swings through Vegas, I do it 3 times a year there, maybe do a show or 2 outside of those. Stick to 5,
mhm.
6 shows a year. Don't go crazy, and, really focus on just developing it and building a fan base.
Where was the venue in Vegas? Was it out
It
off the
was,
strip, near the strip, where
it was
like
basically the convention. It was basically the convention center where they've had
okay,
like expos. It was on the other side where it was called maybe resort or some
yeah,
kind. It was, I don't remember what the sign said. I really don't remember, but basically it was a convention center. So it was
mhm,
just a hall. A big their posts and scaffolding set up, and like while you saw the stars and all that, like that was just
mhm,
scaffolding for me. Like it was all
mhm.
green, blue
Yeah,
screen, green
yeah.
screen, whatever. Like so, I just saw scaffold, and that's where a lot of the media guys were sitting by the end of the night. Was just up on the scaffolding up
Yeah,
in
no,
that
I
little
saw
lounge.
I saw their stuff like after the fact. I was like, wow, Matt had better seats than the media guys as far as
It was
being close.
crowded. It was crowded. Like you talk about
Mhm,
mingling, and that's how it was kind of for the prelims. But once that main card started, especially about halfway through that main card, it was body to body packed. So
mhm,
that's why I say like I would expand it a little bit, and but they can still have it in the same exact place and just pull everything away a few feet. That's the
mhm,
beauty of what they're doing. Just widen it
mhm.
out a little bit, add a few more rows of standing, maybe throw a couple more bleachers in the back, just the aluminum bleachers, so people can rotate up there,
Yeah.
sit on their ass for 5 minutes and
Yeah, yeah,
rejuvenate,
yeah.
and then get
Take a
back to
break
it.
and come back. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's
Yeah.
even if they just kind of put them off to the side with a big screen in front of it, just to because that's what I did. I went to the food court basically area, and I
Mhm.
pulled up a chair and I watched it on the screen when it was in between fights that I was, that I wasn't super interested in. But if the
Yeah.
action picked up and it was like, oh, these guys are squabbing, like when those two women were fighting, it was like,
Mhm,
okay, after that first round, it was like I'm walking over there. I'm gonna go catch some of this action. So that was what was it was available, but just some small things that I'd tweak that would make it a little more fan friendly. They sold no merchandise. That'll be a confusion to me because I feel like there's always a market for some cheap T-shirts and a couple posters that don't cost the promotion anything to do. Print 100 shirts, have 20 posters signed, and if you don't sell the shirts, you just carry them over. Just put Karate Combat logo on them, and your
mhm.
posters don't cost you anything. It costs you $10 to print them, and if you sell 3 of them, you've made 150, $200. So
Yeah, and
um,
and they do have a shop, which is weird, but like you would think. I mean, they sell rash guards, they sell Karate Combat keys. They sent me a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt in the closet here.
they were
Um,
giving away some stuff. They were tossing away hats and stuff, but it wasn't high quality
mhm,
stuff. So it was like they printed some stuff that was kind of really cheap that they could just give away for free,
mhm.
rather than a couple, mid grade shirts that you could sell for 20
Yeah,
bucks a
like they
pop.
have
And
fight shorts. They have a lot of good stuff on the. If you go to their website,
yeah, I
they
mean,
have
my
they have
group
it.
alone would have bought a handful of shirts, a couple
Mhm,
posters. I mean, they were looking for merchandise to because everybody thought it was cool to watch. Everybody thought it was something different and like that. So, um,
mhm.
I guess transition to the UFC. Let's talk about a karate fighter who just signed with the UFC. I jumped the gun last week. Thought MVP had signed with PFL. Turns out, in perfect fashion, it's announced
Hmm.
shortly thereafter during UFC 296, I guess, that Michael, or after it was the post fight. I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
Dana White said at the post fight press
Okay.
conference.
That Michael Venom Page, MVP from Bellator fame, fought in BKFC, also has signed with them to fight Kevin Holland. So good fight.
Hmm.
I'm glad that he didn't try to put him on the contender series or some kind of disrespectful BS, and
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
gets a rightful spot on the main card to try to prove himself in a,
yeah,
in a, in a
yeah.
fight that he, if he wants to be a top contender, he should be able to win. Holland's a game, but he's kind of a
Hmm.
gatekeeper in sense a little bit at this point. Um, he fights
Yeah, but
everybody.
so
You
I
know,
was talking about this with the guys that I trained with last night, and because they saw that fight announcement, and they know that I've covered a lot of Bellator, and again, they're very seasoned in their watching of, they don't just watch UFC. So we were talking about it, and you know, we like the matchup a lot. Um, the only thing I said that makes me lean Holland a little bit is because just the quality of opponents he's had. I mean, and again, and not MVP hasn't fought a bunch of tomato cans. He's fought some solid guys too, but I just think the frequency of who fought who, it favors Holland more. But that could be a double edged sword because it could also be something that the damage taken from these high quality opponents affects him long term. So that's what makes it such a great matchup, though. I think, and Holland's a kung fu guy, so it's almost like a karate kung versus kung fu match. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if he just tries to because he does have who's his jiu-jitsu instructor he always names. Like I'm always forgetting somebody well known. Kevin Holland's jiu-jitsu instructor. He's got a black belt under.
I
Is it
forget.
Travis Luter? I forget who he said is somebody. But somebody well known. And I'm sorry I'm forgetting. But again, I didn't take my Lions mate today. So, but yeah, so it's a really good fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if the odds favor Holland. I hadn't looked at any early odds because
Everything I've
that's the
seen
watch.
right now is like a coin flip, a slight,
Mm,
like minuscule favorite towards like minus 105 for
yeah,
Holland, and
but
plus like 105.
yeah, but MVP's just his did that.
Ed seems to have frozen up a little bit here.
That's
See if we can
weird.
fight through this. Yeah. Okay, you're back now.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I was saying, MVP's narrow frame. It seems like he's got no, the new fight fans that have never seen him fight before will be like, oh, not a great, he doesn't look like he has a lot of power, but I mean, he just separated Goichi Yamauchi's tendon by kicking him in the top of his knee. The
I
dude
forgot
had, I
about
mean,
that one.
he caved in freaking Cyborg's skull with a knee strike. Like the dude is like, I think I remember Bruce Lee talking about striking power, and he said something along the lines of like an iron chain with an iron ball at the end of it, and the power of the snap at the end. That's what I think of when I think about Michael Venom Page's power. So it's something, if he does something like that to Kevin Holland, the the fandom machine of the UFC is gonna elevate MVP to Lord knows Patty Pimblett levels. or Conor, you know what I mean? Like, because MVP has been like a fan kind of icon in Bellator. So for folks that were hating and not watching them on Bellator, if he puts on a show like he did for anything he did at Bellator, um, people are going to be, the dude's going to be on the cover of the next UFC game. You know?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah,
So yeah, no, I look forward to that matchup big time. But that's it. What, 299, I believe.
299. Yeah, it's March.
Yeah, March. Um, so let's get to 296 from this past weekend. No major upsets on the main card. Everything seemed to go as planned, barring I guess the opening fight, which of the main card. Saw Josh Emmett. I mean, just put a brutal knockout on Bryce Mitchell. Um,
Oh yeah,
I mean, one that it was a that was one, one for the record books. Everybody jumps and it's like, oh, this is the most brutal knockout in UFC history. I don't think it was that, but it was. it was for lightweight dudes. It was as destructive of a punch, and it was a scary moment when you start seizing out in the ring and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I hate to see that. I like to see the knockout. I'm not gonna lie. I hate to see the aftermath, I guess, which is probably you know uh, a little hypocritical of me,
Yeah.
but the
Well,
knockout itself
that's
was something that it's what all
yeah.
fight fans go through,
Yeah,
mentally.
exactly.
If you're a normal person, you reason watching this with hoping that nobody suffers,
Mhm.
neurological damage that
Yeah.
turns them into
Well,
something that they're not.
yeah, because it's not like we don't, we do care about the fighters. If you're a fan of them, if you're a fan of them, you're a fan of the sport. You care about the fighters. That's what when I spoke with Eric McCracken, he's been getting a lot of shit lately because of he's posted, he did the thing with the CTE and all that. He's doing it for their benefit. It's a good thing that he's doing. And I asked him the very same thing, and he was just like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's because I love this sport, because I love what these guys do, that I'm trying to advocate for all this stuff. I don't hate it, because the internet's a weird place. They think because you're asking for a little bit of oversight that you hate things. No, you just want it to be good enough for people to enjoy and not worry about anyone dying. But that's beside I'm that's besides the
No, no,
point.
you're 100% right. But Josh Emmett picks up the huge win there.
Yeah,
Um,
just Josh Emmett, Ariana Lipsky, and Shamil Gaziev. They got performance of the night bonuses, and then the fight of the night was Irene Aldana versus Carol Rosa, which was on the prelims. Which I would have been mad if they didn't get that bonus
The
because
prelims were fire. The prelim if had
yeah,
had the prelims just been a fight night, like an
yeah,
Apex
yeah,
card, we'd be talking about it like it was one of the best fight nights of all time.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you had people dropping left and right, going down. You had fights back and forth. Like you said, the Rosa Aldana fight was incredible. Garbrandt picks up a big knockout. Lipsky finally looks like the killer that came out of KSW. I mean, it's
Hmm.
taken a few years now, but she put on a performance, one of the best performances I mean, it was flawless. And you saw it from like the first like 10 seconds the fight started. The minute she
Hmm.
came out there and threw like a combination, you were like, oh, okay. She's on tonight. Like this might be what was promised when she got here. Um,
Yeah.
and gave her the name Queen of Violence. I see a lot of people saying that's Joanna, you know,
Yeah.
right now, after that performance, and she had the brutal knee bar a year and a half, 2 years ago, uh, a devastating arm bar this time. Um, she's marketable as hell. So if she puts together a little bit of a streak, I think she could be something that it moves up in the division pretty quickly.
You want to go check on that? I'll keep talking. Or that's our mascot getting a little crazy in the background. So, but really quick, I wanted to comment on early in the fight. Well, the early prelim, Tagira Ulabanka versus Cody Durden. I'm sorry if I messed up his name. The face crank submission. It was the first submission of the night. Um, Even though Cody Durden lost, I found his it's one of those things where if you follow combat sports and you see folks that are constantly attacking, eventually you're gonna hit something. And Cody Durden just had no choice but to attack, to defend and defend. And Ulanbekov was able to sink in that submission. But I was still impressed with Cody Durden, the way he avoided all the other submission attempts before that. That was like the first submission of the night that I mean that kind of let me, those first three fights where it was TKO, and then that submission. That was kind of set the pace for the night, that I was just like, man, Matt's probably throwing his beer into the crowd out of sheer excitement.
No, I was happy at that point.
Yeah.
At that point, I think I mentioned to the person sitting next to me, 3 fights, 3 finishes is a great start. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, like you said, you had this, and it didn't stop. Then you had the submission by Lipsky, you had the knockout by Cody. Then I
Hmm.
mean, your first decision of the night was the fight of the night, which was
Hmm.
an all timer. I mean, it's not a top 10 fight of all time, but it was a fight that was great by two women that went in there. And I mean, you talk about leaving stuff in the cage and taking everything the other one's got to throw. I
Hmm.
mean, Rosa showed a hell of a chin, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Aldana was dropping some bombs on her by the end of the second round, third round, and she stood in there. And I mean, they both came out bloody messes and beat up, but an outstanding fight. Metafield Jacoby followed that up with another decision, but that was that was a banger too. I mean, you
Yeah.
had both guys get dazed at times where they were kind of stumbling
Oh my
around.
gosh.
You know, I mean,
Yeah,
Menafield, you couldn't come any closer to a knockout than
yeah.
Menafield did.
I feel
You
like
know,
every punch he threw is that was a potential knockout. The way he was throwing it, it just seems like that dude throws the kitchen sink into every single punch he throws.
yeah, it really was. I mean, he was bringing them
Yeah.
from Florida every one of his punches. He was swinging. So um, that was great. And then, like I said, the main card kicked off with a devastating knockout.
Mhm.
Pimblett Ferguson wasn't great, but it was probably what all of us should have expected. We let our hearts talk a little bit for Ferguson. The
Well,
reality is that he's just not the same. He's just not.
so
And
he's not the same, but I will say this. I'll and I like that Patty Pimblett brought it up. I wrote an article on it. You can check out. I have the link to his post fight interview in the article, where he talked. Because they asked him about Ferguson. He talked about the fandom, the weird UFC fandom that exists now, and to have it come from him because he's one of those guys that has the kind of fans that are really fucking weird about it, and then they absolutely hate you as soon as you lose. Like he addressed that in his post fight press conference. But the other thing that I loved when because everyone that they asked Dana White, they asked Pimblett, do you think Tony Ferguson is done? And Pimblett, as a fighter, was the first one to say, none. He's like, no, not at all. When he's done, he'll let us know when he's done. You know, and Tony Ferguson doesn't look like when he wants to be done. But I mean, I think we know that about most, especially in combat sports. You can't tell someone to retire; like they'll know when it's time to retire. And I honestly, Pimblett said something along the lines like, "Okay, maybe stop putting him against us up and coming guys that are racking up wins." They're like, put him against. I forget the names he put out there. He put other names out there, and he even Pimblett said he was like, if he fights those guys, he beats them. You
mhm.
know, um, and I couldn't help but agree with him. I mean, I know you said like we're voting with our hearts or whatever, but I honestly I'm still on the Tony Ferguson hype train. I like Tony Ferguson.
I
I
don't
just
dislike the guy. I don't. I think the days of being a world champion, the days of being a top 10 fighter have passed, and I don't think
mm,
there's anything wrong with that. But there because he mops the floor with Pimblett 5 years ago.
well, that's the
5 years
thing.
ago, that fight's over in a round and a half.
And even Pimblett was like Pimblett said afterward, he was like, I don't know how he got through the first run. I gave him everything I had, and admitted he was like, I was spent after that. Like, and it showed in his fight. Like he admitted, he's like, yeah, no, he even said like, he's a second degree black belt or whatever, and he credited his training. He's like, if I wasn't that well versed in submissions, he would have got me in something, so it still speaks to the level like that's why I like what Pimblett said. I like Patty Pimblett from his Cage Warriors days. I think it's weird. I know he wanted to wash off the Jared Gordon fight with this fight. I don't know if he did that, but the fact that he dressed it the way he did, addressed the fan, talked about the situation with the UFC fandom right now, and the way he handled this fight and gave Tony Ferguson all his respect. I'm still curious to see where his career goes.
I'd like to see Ferguson in PFL fight trying for $1 million. I'd like to see him go over there and try that. Try the route Pettis did. Now
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work out for Pettis and stuff, but still got his name in the news. Got him to headline some events. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Like that's kind of probably where I'd go because I don't want to see Perry. I don't want to see Ferguson buried on prelims.
Mm-hmm.
Where he doesn't deserve to be down there. But I don't. I I just don't. I don't see him beating guys that would be pay-per-view main card worthy fighters. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
that's not disrespect. The dude's put on wars. I've been privileged enough to watch the man compete in front of me, you know, a few times. But I was surprised by how I mean, this is the same thing that's gonna go for Wonder Boy in the next fight. I know that they fought good opponents, but they both just looked like hell. This is gonna go for the main event as well. I mean, it was like there was like a wave of like where you felt like, oh, okay, like these guys are just older. These
Mm-hmm.
guys are older. They've had their days, and now Pimblett, Rachmaninoff, and Leon Edwards, it's their time to shine and really
Yeah.
produce, and that's just the unfortunately as MMA fans when we become attached to these fighters,
Hmm.
especially the old school fighters when
Oh
there
man,
was when Ferguson hit the scene on the Ultimate Fighter and stuff like it was still a different generation of
yeah,
MMA. We were UFC was in the the mid 100s, and he kind of popped on the scene with this flashy, kind of bizarro, you know, uh, you know attributes about him that made it kind of mysterious a little bit. And he would go out there with his funky style and destroy fools. So I mean,
yeah,
he really was robbed of a chance at fame and glory as far as worldwide recognition, by the UFC, just for some reason refusing to ever really give him that title shot. And I know he had some stuff fall through with Khabib. I don't know if any of those were actually title shots, but I don't think they were, now that I think about it, but he should have. He deserved a title shot
yeah. I mean,
years
he
and
was an
years ago that
interim
he never
champion,
got.
so he was always close. Yeah, yeah, he was an
I mean,
interim champion. The whole thing that happened with COVID, and then the twice weigh in, and the pushback, the whole fight that through Justin Gaethje thing. It's like he was always, the circumstance was never on his side. Like when he had that title, I like to this day, I'm like, why did okay? He got injured, and you stripped him of the title. There's guys that they don't do that to. They'll
John
wait
Jones,
forever for them to come back. Yeah, exactly.
John
I'm just
Jones.
like, why did you do that to Tony? Like, I mean, because he speaks his mind a little too often. Because he has spoken up against like favoritism and Dana White privilege and all that stuff. So it's just one of those things that I'm like, there's a reason why a lot of fans like him, because the guy doesn't, he's almost like, I don't want to say like he doesn't look to stir the pot like Nate Diaz does when it comes to the promotional, not doing what he's told type of thing. But he's just somebody that I don't know. I just feel like in another dimension, if he doesn't tweak his knee, saying hello to that jerk off at Fox Sports, I forget the guy it was that it happened with, but I'm great. I'm doing great remembering names tonight. But
He destroys Ferguson, or he destroys
yeah,
he beats McGregor, no problem.
yeah,
If the prime Tony Ferguson had gotten the fight he deserved with Conor McGregor, he would have taken the title before Khabib did.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
If Diaz didn't jump in the mix somehow, and we didn't have a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, and Diaz getting two
mm-hmm.
fights that really, and even Dos Anjos. I mean, Dos Anjos was up a weight. Well, no, it was up at lightweight. I mean, there was really no reason to avoid. And the UFC just figured out a way to not
Mm-hmm.
really want to get Tony too much involved with a bunch of that stuff. And I think they knew it. I think that they knew he'd beat McGregor at a time where they wanted to ride the McGregor train for a couple years,
Yeah.
and that's really what happened. So, if it's his last main big fight, all the best. But like you said, he has no intention of retiring. I'd like to see him in
Mm-hmm.
PFL. I think that competition there might help rejuvenate him a little bit, and he might have a chance to make a nice, healthy payday. I don't know if the paydays will ever get released for this. I have no idea what the UFC is paying him anymore at this point
Mm-hmm.
of his career after some of these losses. But great career. Regardless, he's going to be remembered by MMA fans, and I think that that's the main thing when it's all said and done, is that the
Yeah.
history looks kindly upon you.
Yeah.
Somebody who might set some history of their own, Shavkat Rakhmonov, continues to go undefeated, moves to 18
Mm-hmm.
and 0, finishing Stephen Thompson. Um, again,
Yeah. First guy to submit him too. Yeah.
Thompson looked slow. He looked like he got backed up to the cage. His footwork wasn't as prime Thompson-y. Um, hurts to see, but again, it's just one of those things that I just Father Time's undefeated,
Mm-hmm.
other than maybe Randy Couture and a couple people on this planet, LeBron
Yeah.
James, Randy Couture, and Tom
I feel like
Brady.
it's because of Randy Couture, guys keep going longer than they can because they like, he did it. Why can't I do it?
I
And
think
not,
so.
God bless him for trying.
Yeah, no, I have no issue. I mean, and they're challenging the shit out of themselves fighting
Mm-hmm.
these guys. But Rakhmonov's a killer, man. I mean, he's not super flashy, but everything he does is precise and has
Yeah, you had
meaning to it.
that's the thing about like fandom that bothers me. It's like if you're a fan of just how folks train and stuff like that, and you get some training in yourself, Rachmanov is not boring to you. He's just a wonder. Like watching that fight, I was just like, okay, Yeah, pressuring against the cage is not that fun to watch. But when you look at the chess game aspect of fighting, it made sense. So like, okay, Wonder Boy needs space to do all the stuff he does. So let me take that away from him.
It's what you do against Wonder Boy, and it turns out
Yeah.
Rachmaninoff had a foot injury anyway, so I
Hmm.
think it was a little slower of a pace than would have happened had I think that takedown probably happens earlier in the fight
Hmm.
if he goes in that fight what appears to be without that injury. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, and I don't mean like boring because I wasn't bored at all during the fight. You're just not going to see a Raymond Daniels spin kick out of him. I don't think I like you're not going to see that flash and the craziness that McGregor might bring. But you're just going to have a guy
Hmm.
in there who's like a Fedor style prime robot killer that goes in there and does everything perfectly. And like you said, to somebody who trains, especially with at your level, you're able to look at that and go, "My God, that's perfect." Every
Yeah.
that timing, the game plan, everything he did, all of his movements were
Hmm.
exactly how it's supposed to go. And yes, it took him some time to get into that position, but it was you could see the movements of his body getting there and the
Yeah.
adjustments he was making
And it's
to
not
get in
it's
the
not like
position.
Wonder Boy's a sucker. Like he didn't make it easy for him. That's why it took him time to get there either.
First
It's
time he's ever been submitted
yeah.
in his career. So I mean, it's just it's one of those things. Rachmanov, I think he's probably the. I mean, it looks like Bilal Muhammad will probably be the next title contender for Leon Edwards. Rightfully
Hmm.
so, probably deserves it. Another guy
Yeah.
who's not the most aesthetically pleasing fighter, but just like Ferguson that we're mentioning, he doesn't deserve to not get his opportunity. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Fan or not, like we shouldn't. Should be this should be somewhat of a sport.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
you earn your place, you should get the title fight,
Yeah.
regardless of how many Instagram followers you have or what your
Hmm.
body shape looks like or
Yeah. For
how
sure.
you know what I mean? Like none of that should matter at that point.
Yeah, and it's funny
Big
because
country goes on a 10 fight win streak. Big country should be fighting for the title, even if he looks like a fucking
exactly.
slob. You know what I mean?
And at the end of the day, I think in MMA, as long as it's around, been around, as long as it's going to be around, at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter the most. And even if you look at Khabib's, like Khabib was winning and winning and winning. He didn't do anything other than fight and win. Look at your boy Fedor. Fedor was a man of very little words, but there's a reason why he's considered one of the greatest of all times in the sport is because at the end of the day, the wins are what counts the most. And I just talked to a fighter, Dedrick Sanders, that fought on Friday night over at Nashville Underground, over at Spectation Sports, and he's somebody that not on anyone's radar. I mean, probably the UFC's radar now, is he won his fight. He's gotten, I think he's on a 5 fight win streak now himself, and he's just somebody that, speaking to him, very soft spoken. Not a big trash talker. Has social media, but doesn't even use it to market his fights because at the end of the day, I mean, from the man himself, he was like, I'm just going. I go in there and I do my job, and I win. And as long as I keep winning, I'm gonna get to wherever I need to be. You know what I mean? And I think that's always gonna matter in MMA, as long as these executive rich fuckheads don't ruin
Yeah,
it.
see, we're having a nice time show today, but
Hmm.
definitely want to get to these next two fights real quick.
Hmm.
Alexander Pantoja, Brandon Royval. Obviously, we went in this roofing for Royval.
Hmm.
Pantoja shows massive dominance, picks up a second win over Royval, picks up a title defense, and looks like a pound for pound number one style fighter out there in the process. Picking up a unanimous decision, domination, basically bell to bell. There was
Yeah.
moments in the last round for Royval, but
Yeah.
you know,
Moreno
I
was there.
mean,
They weighed him in as backup. I thought that was nice.
Pantoja looked great. I mean, I
Hmm.
we'll see what his next few fights are. Hopefully, we get some new blood where we can keep getting some fresh bouts. Obviously
Yeah.
Moreno's going to deserve a rematch, um,
Hmm.
but um, but barring the Figueiredo, rock'em sock'em back and forth between those
Yeah.
guys, it'd be nice to see some development of that division and
Yeah. No,
and,
it's
and,
nice to
and
see
get a
something different. Yeah.
and just constantly, get some fresh fights there. And but he seems like a great dominant champion and seems like a good guy who's got a good story and stuff. So good all around there at 125. Felt sorry for Royval, but he's young enough. Man, he'll make another run at it.
Yeah,
He's
for
got it
sure.
in him.
For
Um,
sure.
Main event: Leon Edwards destroys Colby Covington, start to finish. Covington came out, looked slow as hell. Made comment to the person sitting next to me like something's not right here, or he got old, or he's having an
Mhm.
off night. literally 20 seconds into the fight. I mean, it was you could tell that it was just off, and that's no nothing taking nothing away from Edwards. Edwards went out there, did
Mhm.
his job, and I mean, just dominated the fight, just like GSP or just like Usman or any of those Woodley or any of those other guys would have done in the exact same situation.
Yeah, Dana White was asked about it, and he said this. He had the same take that everyone else had about it as far as Colby Covington. And when they asked, like, one of the things he said about, and we just talked about how time is undefeated. I mean, Dana White was even like, the problem is these guys like if you wait, this sport doesn't wait for anybody. If you want to wait for title shots and wait for certain fights, it's gonna pass you by if you sit back and wait. Like whatever you have, when it leaves you, you don't know it leaves you until you're in the fight. And this is me saying that. That wasn't something Dana White said, but he was hinting at this, like, you know, if you don't keep your blades sharp, eventually you find out when they get dull when you try to use them, and that happens when you wait like that. So in that sense, I get why he said that. Why he, when he gets mad about people not taking fights, he made a really strong point about why this sport is so unforgiving, and it's the changing of the guard is happening as often as it does, especially these days, because we saw it with Colby, like that. That might be it. That I think that's pretty much it for him. He'll be a co-main. He'll be a main card guy still, but he'll be co-main next time he fights.
For sure, and he should be, and I think he
Yeah.
even resigned to that. I think he was saying a fight with Wonder Boy or a couple other fights would be something that would be marketable and be able to sell and make some sense. Um, my follow up question to Dana White, if there was an actual MMA media, would be as a promoter of the biggest promotion in the world and somebody who's kind of by proxy responsible for helping grow this sport. Why, as a promoter, would you put a main event with a fighter who hasn't fought in 3 years? How
Yeah.
perhaps your job as a promoter shouldn't be to put somebody out there who hasn't showed that they even can walk across the cage without looking like an 85-year-old man. Like, how about we start with that, Dana White? Like, so while you're criticizing him for holding out fights, why are you promoting him as a main event fighter, as a title contender when he hasn't fought in 3 years? So maybe we should let the Muhammad's and the
Mhm.
Rachmanovs and all these other guys actually be fighting for the title instead of just trying to sell the biggest pay-per-view numbers you can, because in
Mhm.
fact, because it's going to backfire on you. And I think you probably lost some fans who paid for this fight and
Mhm.
then watched the main event and said, "Well, what did the UFC just sell me? They sold me a pound for pound top guy in Leon Edwards against a guy who was appears to be extremely washed." So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it kind of came off to me, like, well, don't promote it then. But neither here nor there. Event, I give the event about a 6.5, 7 out of 10. Prelims were a 10. Main card
Mhm.
had some real flashes but had some letdowns as well. Main event was down let down, and then it was a little disappointment for me, seeing a couple of the legends get knocked down. That doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily hurt a lot of people's opinion, but it hurts mine a little bit. um you before we started recording, you mentioned the brawl in the crowd. I thought that that was kind of a joke. Again, Dana White. I know I'll take responsibility for putting them next to each other. You know what you're doing. They admitted that all the smack talk from the press conference the day before gave a 25% boost to a pay per view.
Mhm.
Um, so within minutes of him telling us that, then you get a fight between the other two dudes who just happen to be seating like 3 rows apart
Yeah.
in a 20,000 seat arena. Makes no sense. Meanwhile, you got Aljamain Sterling, who apparently isn't allowed into UFC events anymore as a
Yeah.
former champion. So
Yeah.
it's the promotion, it's the dirty underground
Yeah.
stuff. I know I saw like Ariel Hawani went off, called it kind of the bastardization of the McGregor area. I just call it the extension of the McGregor era. Me and you were
Mhm.
doing this podcast and doing interviews even before I had done some interviews prior to even us teaming up for a podcast with some other podcasts. And my whole thing was, this is not the MMA world I like. This is going to create and I can go back to Chael Sonnen. Listen, I didn't like the Chael Sonnen stuff, going after Brazilians and all that other
Mhm.
stuff. I thought that that was Son had a little bit more charisma, and you kind of just, it was a different time. You didn't have copycatters all over the friggin' world that were trying to promote themselves like it. But I just think it's the whole, it's this now where it's catching up to us, where you've created this. We don't have the Fedors, the Igor Vovchanchins, the even Chuck Liddells and the Tito Ortiz talked, but Vitor Belfort's. You had guys that were just straight killers that had no reason to talk about somebody's family or religion or physical attributes or anything or sexual
Mhm.
preference. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. All that stuff is lowbrow shit that's finally coming back. And while the UFC might sell some pay-per-views off of it, I do think in the long run that it's going to hurt the sport because you're going to get somebody to say something that's really, really going to damage. ESPN's going to hear something on their airs, the air
Mhm.
that one day is, or somebody's going to do something or say something, or somebody's going to retaliate. Listen,
Yeah.
when you start talking about somebody's family and stuff, God forbid what could happen.
Mhm.
I mean, some of these dudes are straight psychopaths. A lot of them are great dudes, but some of them are wild, crazy people. I wouldn't want to go after. I wouldn't want to be mentioning a lot about Strickland's family to his face.
Mhm.
You know, So there's that. I just think it's not great. I think it was kind of set up to happen. Sadly, I
Yeah.
hate to say that. Um,
Well, somebody just shared something from like the early Ultimate Fighter days when Dana White kicked 3 guys out of the house for
mhm.
getting
It used to
crazy.
be that way.
Somebody shared the clip and they were like, and that's what they put in the the heading of the clip. They were like, this is how Dana White used to be, and now it's like the opposite is welcome. And I mean a lot of people pointed out, not just what you said. There's other people pointed out that's like, oh, it's funny how they had the 4K cameras ready right there and ready to catch everything. So yeah,
It's
I
a
mean,
conspiracy theorist, but like again, I asked somebody else this weekend, has anybody seen John Jones' scars yet? Have we heard any reports about his surgery?
yeah.
I mean,
Don't forget TKO. It's the WWE and
I mean,
and
one
you
of
know
the
what I
most
mean.
egomaniac fighters of all time hasn't posted a picture of his scar, his
Hmm.
recovery, him lifting weights after having surgery, him in a recovery tub, or anything from one of the most egotistical fighters of all time. It seems odd to me. And again, I'll probably be proven wrong, but until that day comes, I'm gonna stick to my guns that there's something fishy going on with that one.
Hmm.
And like you said, the 4K cameras suddenly are available. Also, you show me any situation where somebody can get into a fist fight like 30 feet away from a former president and possible future president, and nobody get put in handcuffs and taken away.
Somebody else mentioned that too. I forget who, but yeah, yeah, yeah. That was something that I was just like, oh yeah,
You
yeah.
don't
Like
even
like
think
what do you do?
about that. Like there was so much secret services up in there. Like he probably jumped over a secret service agent to get to, you know what I mean? Like they
Hmm.
had to have been spread out that arena like you wouldn't have known. There could have been one sitting up by me, like up in the upper level. They got their eyes on everybody. So to just
Hmm.
be able to even get to the point where you could do that and not create, I mean, for them not to rush Trump out of there, or there even be a like, hey, we need to circle Trump. Like it was like, oh, okay, this is kind of planned.
Hmm.
We'll laugh it off, rush him out of here. Happens at a
Yeah.
great time too. Happens between fights, not during the event at all. Never happened during a
Hmm.
fight. Happened, at a timed position
Yeah,
when the cameras were there.
that's
And
true. Yeah.
if those guys hated each other so much to jump over a chair, you would have thought it would have happened during the first 4 hours of the night.
Hmm.
you know. So, anyways, we'll leave it on that. But overall, it was a great weekend of action. Slows down a little bit now. Check out Grabaka Hitman Kaposa on Twitter if you're interested in other fights going on. He has his schedule and he can tell you everything with fight going on from
Everything that's going on.
Biloxi to,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
to Bulgaria to Botswana. So he's got them all listed there. Go check him out. But fans can check us out and follow us on Twitter at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Edit Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. Appreciate you, Kevin Nicholson, chiming in there with some good words for us.
Guys, you made it 2023 MMA better. Thanks. Appreciate that, Kevin.
That's why we do it, man. If we can make anybody
Hmm.
enjoys listening to this show, it's worth it for us. So we really appreciate those words, and that's what keeps us doing this on a weekly
Yeah.
basis. Um,
Enjoy your holidays, everybody.
if for some reason we don't show up next week, we're planning on it. But if we don't, have a Merry Christmas. Have a Merry Christmas anyway. If we don't see you for some reason next week, have a Happy New Year. But we should be here. Good night, everyone.